We appreciate you staying with us, everyone, on TMI this Thursday. We're joined by two gentlemen already on the program to help us find context and perspectives as far as this discussion around tackling corruption, especially at institutional level, is concerned. I would love to begin from my immediate left. Felix Osarieme is a lecturer, Department of International Studies and Diplomacy, University of Benin. It's good to have you on the program.
Oh, yeah, good morning. Yes, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Next to him is a constitutional lawyer, Notre Republic of Nigeria, former special advisor to the former governor on legal matters in Edo State, talking about Barrister Adam Saliu. It's so good to have you on the program this morning.
Good morning, viewers. Thank you, moderator.
Great. I'd like to begin with you, Barrister Aliu. I mean, you are in private practice now, essentially. You've also seen a large part of the public service. I mean, you followed that process for decades now. The president, Muhammadu Buhari, is raising very serious concerns about the processes that lead up to recruitment into the civil service. He says that there are people, there are ministries, departments, and agencies that are now recruiting people through the so-called back door into the civil service. Is that the trend that started yesterday morning? It has always been here, hasn't it?
No, it has not always been like that. In years, advertisements for recruitment is made open. I got many jobs via advertisement. No godfather. You apply, appear before a panel, do interview, and you are employed. Started journalism with the Punch. I was the pioneer staff of the Punch. I features editor in 1975. I moved to the Daily Times in CAC to advertisement. I transferred to UBCH as the public relations boss and chief PRO in 1992. All these were via advertisement. So it is very incongruous and incomprehensible that there is no advert place for recruitment. Yes, people are being recruited through the bank. It is condemnable. Those without godfathers are not employed. And even the so-called recruitments, for years now, the governors, as if they are ad idem, as if they have agreed among themselves, they don't advertise positions. And people are retiring from service. Some workers are dying with their social recipes. But yes, no recruitments, no overt and open recruitment to fill this lacuna. This is not what it should be. It is an epitome of corruption and favoritism. People coming in through the back door. It should be condemned in all ramifications. The society belongs to all. Section 14 sub 2 tells us that security and welfare is a place by no government. But now the government is not bothered about the welfare. So corruption should be condemned in all ramifications. It is not who takes 10 naira bribe that is corruption. At the top level, when people don't openly put up advert for employment, they recruit through the back door, through who it is a fact of corruption to be condemned.
So Barrister Adams, I'm going to ask you just one more question before I turn to Felix Osarieme. We have seen governors in this country who say, look, in the last 1 year, for example, we've been able to fish out 450 ghost workers. We've heard that story severally. How much of difference has it made ultimately?
Well, that assumption that ghost workers have been seen, we say in law, videlis est credulus, seeing is believing. How many people have been prosecuted? The agent provocateur that put those names there so that when the month ends, they use fake names to collect money. So there's no evidence that people have been prosecuted for perpetuating ghost workers. Somebody is in charge that uses dead people's name, non-existent people to collect the money. So until they are prosecuted, found wishing to serve as deterrent to the other, I will just assume that it's mere governmental propaganda to say that ghost workers have been discovered. If you discover them, the agent provocateur, the person incorporating those names, should be taken to court, punished to serve as deterrent. No one has been tried. So ceteris paribus, this is government propaganda that ghost workers are being confused.
So Felix, I'd like to talk to you about the systemic angle to this whole conversation, right? It has been here, of course, long before President Muhammadu Buhari came into office, at all levels, local, state, and federal, for instance. But the president is now saying that, look, there are also ministries, there are departments, there are agencies of the government, especially at the federal level, who now take advantage of ongoing projects that are already underway, already being executed, and they replicate them in new budgetary cycles. But some persons say, look, we can't continue to talk like this and run around the King Square, for want of better words, without actually punishing people real time for these kind of crimes.
Yeah, so exactly what is the question?
So the point being made now is, at this institutional level, where the problem is systemic, how do you deal with it?
Well, let me take it from this perspective. There is an aspect here that we should be very clear about. Individuals don't just do things because they want to do it. Most of the time, there is motive and there is a conclusion of that intention. So the public service is seen as a public pool where you can expropriate surpluses for yourself, whether you deserve it or not. In a patron-client system, as Richard Joseph, the political scientist, said, what we call prebendalism, you use your position to take care of those that are close to you. If that is how we understand our government and our political system, it will be delusional to believe that the president of Nigeria of today is raising eyebrows about what he is well aware of, what he knows is the name of the game, what he also admits, even though he has not expressly said so, is the system. And it is even more interesting and confusing to understand that we are in a society where public service is seen as an opportunity to line your pockets and to also serve those who are close to you. In fact, it is even an anathema right now in Nigeria that you go to public service, you live on your income and you retire and you come home. Your family will disown you. Let's not even get to the larger society. Even within your home, your children will make mockery of you. If you are a man, your wife will likely even divorce you. If you are looking at that, therefore, how do you now go to the national level to now begin to condemn what is seen as normal? Sigmund Freud said, no, it was Emile Durkheim that said, the psychologist that said that crime is what is considered as crime by the virtues of the principles of that society. So in Nigeria today, when you're in public service and you bring people into the job to the back door, you are involved in sleaze and you line your pockets, it is no longer considered as a crime. It is not. I'm not saying it is not a crime. It is not considered as a crime because it is now a normal thing. Irrespective of the fact that the country knows that it's a crime, we have accepted it as normal. It has become part of the culture. And let me push this narrative further a bit. The recruitment process, as my co-discussant has clearly established, is the system that would have been able to check all these things. You make something open, transparent. It is advertised. You call a committee, a panel of competent and persons with unassailable character, with impeccable credentials, people who have integrity. You constitute them into a panel. Please help interview these intending applicants, or these applicants. And they do a decent job. And they submit their recommendation. And you use that as a template. The system will go well. That is when you're talking of merits, competence, and qualification. When you do not develop that kind of process, you use, as we say it in Nigeria, man or man, who you know. When you bring those things in, and you are complaining about the end, when you know that the process itself was flawed.
Ab initio.
ab initio. So it therefore sounds, that's why I use the word, is delusional. We are always, as a country, involved in clout chasing. We leave the substance. We'll be running around the shadow. And we know where these things come from. I wouldn't want to use the word government lacks political will. Government itself encourages it. Government, as my colleague also mentioned, that the governors don't even advertise positions anymore. People are leaving service. People are dying. May their souls rest in peace. People are retiring. But you don't hear of a concurrent recruitment process. On account of, in a bid to fill those gaps. Those gaps. Because gaps always happen in every employment system. Yeah. There's what we call secondment. You can be in one ministry, you'll be moved to another ministry. Your gap that you left, what happened to it? You can go on leave of absence. That one is different because you will likely return. Maybe you have another appointment that your services are needed. That one is different. Jokingly, if you go to social media, you find young men posting captions such as, do people ever retire from NNPC and CBN? Or government house? You don't ever hear of advertisement in those areas. And these are the sectors that are, let me call them, the juicy areas where you get an employment that will guarantee you a good life. Don't they ever advertise? Even if you hear of advertisement, most times the word on the street that they have already filled those vacancies. They want to now do a charade that will now make it look as if they have actually advertised. Meanwhile, sometimes when you even go for the interview, those that didn't go for the interview will be the ones to be employed. They will even tell you openly that we don't need to go for the interview, we will get the job. So there is no confidence building measure in the system. I'm going to discuss, if time will permit us, the software and the use of ICT. The IPPIS platform, for example. Those can come in later. But at the process of bringing people in, do we have a transparent and accountable system? The answer, as we are sitting and staring at each other, is no. I'm glad you even mentioned the integrated personnel and payroll system. System, which again the chairman of the ICPC has indicted, because he says there are compromised elements at the IPPIS end who are now also collaborating with other criminal elements within the core civil service space. Is technology not supposed to be a blessing on this front? Yes, technology, ordinarily, what is technology? The application of scientific inventions to address problems, natural or otherwise. So if, for example, I want to get to Lagos, I take a flight. That is the use of technology to accelerate my movement. I can as well start trekking from here to Lagos, maybe a year, 2 years, as far as I can get to Lagos. So it is either I use the natural method or I use the contrived innovative method where man has now added his capacity to think beyond his immediate problem to address the problem. That's what we call technology. Now, in introducing technology, we have not just the computer itself, we have programs. Many. We have the IPPIS, Integrated Personnel Payroll Information System. In fact, that one has put my union, ASU, at loggerheads with the government consistently that it has a lot of flaws. Why are you even forcing people into a program that you are not sure of? A program that you contracted to consultants. The government has solution to most of these problems. Let us even look at IPPIS. Let me not discuss the flaws yet. If it was to operate as a personnel management system software, it can tell you at every point in time how many persons are in which department of government, what they earn, their categorization, when they enter, when they are exiting. All this information can be fed in. Let us leave the fact that people can go and do change of name, go and do change of date of birth. They can swear affidavits. People keep, in fact, some people, their files are always being updated to avoid that age of retirement, which is also a common phenomenon in the core civil service. Let us look at those things in true perspective. If you impute information into the software and it is generated properly, then it is stored, transmitted. There must be a collection point. There's a central point. Right. In all of this, people manage them. So if the persons are of competent and unimpeachable integrity, it means therefore that they will capture data as it is and assemble it and forward it for storage. The management, therefore, is where the problem lies. The person that imputes the information can decide to impute information of those that are not even before him.
Right.
That is the point the ICPC chairman is trying to establish. Outside that, the managers of the database can also begin to tinker with some of the information. If you are able to access some of them, they can tell you, okay, come and let us adjust this in your favor. We have a situation where I work, people have problem with their payment, they will tell them to come to Abuja.
And they work in Benin.
They work in Benin. That is out of the world today. I mean, if I can in my room buy airtime in my phone, I can discuss with somebody. I can also use the same platform. If my information is with you, why do I have to come all the way from Benin City to Abuja? What about the risk? What about the cost implication? And ordinarily, the software, the integrated personnel payroll information system, is supposed to make accounting for staff and their payment easier. Easier means I can call you, this is my information, check my data, my name is there, everything is there. If I have the number, then you see my profile. You are supposed to also do biometric.
Right.
That means my fingerprint does not change. Technology has established that one for us. It also means that if my fingerprint does not change, my face does not change, then it is me that you are discussing with, so long as I can provide certain parameters. So, and once you are the person with the necessary protocol, you can check my profile. Meaning, therefore, that it is not the technology that is the problem. It is our misuse that is the problem. In fact, those who are in charge of managing technology, they are happy these days because they are now in charge of determining who gets what and when. They can decide to now employ people for you as the owner of the establishment, because it is what they feed in that you are working with. And that's not supposed to be. Meanwhile, there's also supposed to be a backdoor. Do we have BVN? Yes. From the angle of government and the central bank that manages the BVN, they can actually checkmate and see this person is earning from so and so point and so and so point. Because your BVN will show what flows into your account. Unfortunately, again, there is no synergy between the government departments. So we have the ICT, we didn't develop these softwares anyway, we acquired them. And we are not using them well. My union, as academic staff union universities, developed a software, proposed to federal government to say, okay, if IPC is not working, which is not even going to be very effective in the university system, based on the peculiarities of the university system, we developed one, subject to all integrity tests. They have done that. Let us deploy it. That one has now become another political matter. So it is the government that is playing politics with all these things. They know where the problem is. They know what to do. That is why the software is on the problem.
We're going to come back to you, but I'd like to talk to Barrister Adam Saliu quickly. Let's talk about prosecution. Incidentally, you are a lawyer, constitutional lawyer for that matter. What makes prosecution so difficult, or in some cases, some people see it as impossible? Because one would have thought when you realize that a particular ministry or agency of the government has ghost workers or has budgetary documents padded, for example, you fish out those responsible, you prosecute them. That isn't anyway a rocket science, is it?
Constitutionally, vis-a-vis corruption, it is generational. The generational change is very condemnable now. Once upon a time, we had governments in this country. Yakubu Gowon was the head of state for 9 years. His father died in Lusasa. He cried that he has no house in Lusasa, people to bury, he had no money. It took months for people to contribute before he buried his father. Ambrose Ali was a professor of morbid anatomy in West of Benin. Here. His father died at Ekpoma. He cried out. He had no house in Ekpoma. He had no money to do better. People were contributing money. Ogbemudia built anywhere you can think of, UBCH, UBB, Stadium, etc. He lived and died in Iheya streets of New Lagos Road, in his mother's place. Were these not governments? In 1980s, by the time there was one coup, all the people that were governors, commissioners, ministers that were corrupt, they were sentenced, tried and sentenced to outrageous length of imprisonment because they were corrupt. 100 years, 80 years, etc. Right now, it is not being done because the governments it's not clean. Constitution has been institutionalized. The government itself. In fact, a local government councillor, if you win election now, by Christmas, you will have married more wives and built more houses
That's in less than a month, about 3 weeks.
But I've given you people of the heads of state and president. Their parents died, they could not prove it. They cried out. It took months before people protest, make their money today. It was in this same country. So the government should show the lights so that people will find a way. Because it is very clear that when you show the light, people will follow the way. Now, the court is there to try people that were corrupt, politicians, ministers, the second republic. They were jailed as an historian. There was even war against indiscipline. If you sell something above the normal price, you are tried and persecuted, the goods are seized. There's indiscipline, it should be condemned, and it starts from the head. The government has all it takes, has the wherewithal to institutionalize cleanliness, anti-corruption measure, but no one to be tried. The law is there to serve as deterrence to others and punish the offenders so that people will be afraid. But now, people engage in corruption with reckless abandon and notice that it's very, very sad. That was not the country the colonial master bequeathed to us. White men were here. I attended the Catholic college, Reverend Fathers, principal. They didn't have houses, they didn't have cars. The white men, they left like that. But here now, one person who is a governor, who is a minister, we have an estate, and yes, nothing will happen. So let us tackle corruption from the top, not the semi-demi quasi messenger who takes 5 naira bribe. That is where corruption is. The poor masses are suffering. Younger ones that with no work. It ought not to be. Vacancies that are there should be advertised. Independent panel should interview people and employ people on merits. The country belongs to all of us. Security and welfare should remain the principal part of government. I lay the fault at the doorstep of the leadership of this country. They are perpetuating corruption using their position, immunity, and all the paraphernalia of office. The country is no more laudable for us to be proud of.
I want to ask you a follow-up question quickly. On Tuesday, President Muhammadu Buhari expressed explicit confidence in the ICPC. ICPC, yes. He said he was confident the ICPC will use all of the resources and latitude, prerogative, whatever it has, to fight corruption within the civil service, amongst the MDAs. Of course, by the side, we also have the EFCC, for example. So government has got all of these mechanisms to fight corruption. But then again, President Buhari some years ago had also said, look, some of these cases have become an issue because by the time they get to court, they stall, they drag for too long. In part, he also had blamed the judiciary at that point in time. The question is, at what point are we going to make the most of institutions like the ICPC, for example? The second one would be, is there any chance we will stop the blame game anytime soon and take action on these issues?
Well, the ICPC, if I can remember, was instituted in Obasanjo regime.
Right.
So now, it is to check corruption, just as an independent corrupt justice commission, as the name implies. The prosecution, when non-lawyers say that a trial process judicially takes some time, that it should be done like they do in the village. You take the case, they just give judgment within 24 hours. No, there are procedures, civil procedure, criminal procedure. You file a matter, the person must reply. You are examined in chief, the other person must cross-examine. You must address court. Witnesses, if you name 10 witnesses, each one should be given chance to state his own case. All the other party, the other party has to be heard. There's nowhere longevity of the trial. With VCAs, we determine that the person culpable will be free. Cases have lasted 20 years, and yes, the accused person is still pronounced guilty. They are so that it is longer than the normal process, because when the benefit of doubt in law, advantage goes to the accused person, because it's not safe to condemn an innocent person. So let the usual process take place, let the government institute, and not only that, even if you lose a matter, you have right to appeal to Court of Appeal, thereafter to Supreme Court, etc. All these are to ensure that justice is done. So let us see that the government with the bow and arrow with what it takes ensure. Buhari was part of those former government that brought up ICPC. That's why he has confidence in it. Then the executioners should ensure that the trial is free and fair, and victims should be punished to serve a deterrent to others. Nobody should be treated with guilt. Nobody is above the law. So I quite well like his confidence in the establishment, and the people executing it, they should equally be above board and take matters as they are, until we see signs and wonders where corrupt people have been punished, property seized and confiscated. Then people will start to mind their business and know that it is not yet Hosanna, it is not yet El Dorado as it were to be.
Great, thank you. So Felix, we turn to the issue of the ICPC once again. The chairman of that commission has said that, look, their most recent investigation has indicted in particular the Ministry of Labor and Employment, where you have Dr. Chris Ngige as the minister in charge of that ministry. Of course, as expected, the ministry had come out to also state its position on this matter. Will specifics, I mean, being specific about ministries or maybe agencies of government that have been fingered in this corruption issue help move the conversation a bit further and better the situation ultimately?
Well, at face value, yes, prima facie, you say, oh, well, they pointed out that this ministry, they were able to identify this particular department of government that has been doing maybe personnel padding, then there is ghost worker syndrome. It is not enough to just mount these stories. There must be consequence for mischief. Crime and punishment is a normal process of control society. In fact, there is no freedom without law. And the essence of law is to regulate relations and to restrain excesses. If we have ICPC, as we do have, and ICPC is pointing out at a particular ministry, it is not just to point out what is going to happen thereafter. Justice must not just be done, it must be seen to have been done. Let's take it to the model that is adopted in China, which may be a very necessary model. Of course, we cannot say China is democratic the way we are. China is more totalitarian, but it's an open and developing society. In Nigeria, as my co-discussant has just rightly said, the will of God grinds slowly but surely. Justice is not always quick fix. We don't see it as quick fix. That's part of our problem. We are in haste. We are quick to punish, to condemn, without knowing that there are processes. If a man spends 15 years to get to the level of maybe a director in the civil service and begins to involve himself in sneeze and award contract to ghost companies and phony companies and to cronies, it didn't take 1 year to get to that level. Right. So you may say that his trial may not just last 1 day or 5 days or 15 days. You may have to investigate everything about that person. Corruption cases are very detailed cases. You have to go through every item. And you must, as it's always said, an accused person is deemed innocent until his guilt has been proven by a competent court. So you cannot just say this one is guilty because you saw that he has not bought a house. No. But as the Chinese model works, let me explain the Chinese model, which is very helpful. If we want to adopt it, it would have solved our problem. But we don't want to adopt it in Nigeria. How do they do their own? Fine. Once you enter public service, they also apply to private service anyway. But in public service, as long as you are employed, your income is known. Your allowances are also known. Everything, your total emolument is known. Your emolument is known, so your lifestyle is also going to be fit within your income range. If it exceeds, you are already under inquiry. Aside of that, your family, particularly if you are a male, your wife, your relations may be invited. They will be taken on what we call familiarization tour. They will bring you to where you work. What are your expectations? They will show your family. They will not take your relations, your wife, particularly your spouse. They will take them to correctional centers where incarceration will be the lot of those who are involved in corrupt acts. They will also take them to the final point. Sometimes, when it is a very critical case, death sentence awaits that person in China. They don't hide their own. They still do it in China until tomorrow.
Capital punishment.
Capital punishment. They do. So they will show your spouse all these things and tell your spouse, advise your spouse, your husband or your wife, advise them so that they must live within the means. If you cannot manage within these means and you're in public service, go to private sector, go and try your hand on speculation and other ventures that can give you fast returns. Yeah. But if you are in public service, it's not hell on earth. It is a way that you have to grow. You talk of things like mortgage, pension. It is not overnight. It takes time. So you are calculating maybe 25 years in service, or 50 years or 65 or 70 years of age, depending on which sector you work. So you know you have this timeline. And that's why things are also developed that will make your stay within service company. For example, your income is paid on time. If you are promoted, your entitlements are given to you on time. There are no shortfalls. There are no areas that are stacked for years. So government does not.
So you don't have to protest and carry placards.
No, you don't have to always
over pension issues.
You don't have to go and form association of retired civil servants, association of retired policemen that is now common in Nigeria. People are retired, they now form association. They now form a lobby group again in retirement to start fighting for their pension. Pensioners die on the street in this country. Nothing. Even the contributory pension scheme, you are not even sure. People like Mena, who has just been sentenced, would have made away with your savings for life, and they'll be giving just a slap on the wrist, 8 years imprisonment. Some people will tell you point blank that I would try to even go and steal half of what Mena stole and spend 16 years. So long as if I survive at the end of 16 years, I
come back into opulence.
You are just sure of it. Mena was smiling in court when he was sentenced. He was waving at his friends. He was smiling. The man will look at what he has amassed. Look at the timeline given to him, 8 years. And if we do day and night calculation, it will be 4 years for him. They will tell you that, sometimes incongruously, some people will interpret that it has started counting by the time the trial started.
I think there are even instances where the judges would make that very clear.
That is very, very interesting. So let's also look at the judiciary part alone. We must look at how the government constructs its own structure. If the government insists that when you start work, this is what you are earning, this is where it will take you. Calculate for inflation and the rest. It is possible. Right. This is not rocket science, sincerely. You can actually project what you earn, where you live, how much you pay as your rent if you are in tenancy, how much you will need to build a house if you have to get a facility. All these things are computable. Those of us in public sector, we have NHF, National Housing Fund. We contribute. We don't even see the money. People are waiting for that your money to leave you out. It may be small, maybe 5,000 a month. When you take 5,000 for the number of workers that are in federal civil service, you know how much that money amounts to. And you don't access that money. People who retire, they don't have access to such funds. So some people are waiting. As soon as the monthly collection is done, they will move it to private accounts. And all these are traceable. We have electronic trade. You cannot take money from one point and take another point without leaving a trail. Right. It will always be found. So it is not whether these things are happening, it is what happens when you are discovered. And at the point of sounding very, very harsh, it has reached the point in Nigeria where we need to institute stiffer measures. It is not enough to just say go to court. The court will always follow the law because the law is what the court interprets and work with. If we change the laws, the National Assembly can do review of the acts that enable EFCC and ICPC to work, empower the police to be more proactive, empower the correctional centers to be more realistic so that they will not turn to another breeding ground for criminals. Then institute proper legislation that if you are earning so and so income at so and so time you are not paid, you can even take the government to court because the government is now pushing you into corruption. Right. Let it be holistic. It's not just to look at one side. Oh, this man stole, he dipped sand in the tea because he was not paid on time. Yes. Why did he do that? If his income is enough for him, will he go by his side?
If his income comes on time, yes.
Will he go by his side? If he's sure that 30th is 30th, he will get his salary. He can tell you, okay, on the 30th, give me this 2 cups of rice, give me this gallon of oil. On the 30th, I will get my money, I will pay you. Is the man sure that by 30th, his salary will be paid? If it is paid by 30th, is he also sure that gas has not gone beyond what his salary can afford? All these are the things. It is not just enough to blame workers. We must look at how the government, the leaders of the country, those who actually sit down to plan, those who do not pay for what we pay for, because they don't pay. They get most of these things as perks of their office. So they don't know. what we know on the street.
Right.
So you leave your house, you are sure that you have 200 naira in your pocket to pay transport, but you are not sure 200 will take you to work, because when you get to Ring Road, they will tell you that bus has moved to 250 naira to go work.
Because the members are protesting.
Because there's protest on the road. So the money has doubled. How do you not get to work? And you don't get to work, you are queried. Even when you explain to your boss, oh, I'm sorry, I was stuck in traffic, there was protest, it will tell you that is your business. So at the end of the day, every man is not thinking for himself outside the box. That is why corruption has now become the name of the game.
Let's talk about thinking outside the box for a minute, Barrister Aliyu. I mean, Felix just talked about the Chinese model, for example. A story is told about former Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, blessed memory, of how that a minister in his cabinet had to commit suicide because he had been fingered in a corruption case. He left a note behind, a suicide note, that is, to say, look, he had to commit suicide because he knew if Lee Kuan Yew found out, he was going to die anyway, so he had to do it his own way, that sort of thing. While we are not going to sit here to recommend some very outrageous measures, but some persons are saying it's high time Nigeria raised the bar in terms of the level of punishment, severity of punishment for people who commit these offenses. Because there's also the fear that, okay, if you say let's go back to the National Assembly, let's take a second look at our laws as they are today. There are also those who have been fingered in one form of corruption case or another at the National Assembly, whether it's the Senate or the House of Reps, allegedly so, for instance. How do you tell a man to come to equity with clean hands when his hands have never been washed, ever?
Well, the National Assembly, as it were, before now, people were elected to serve. Right now, the National Assembly, let's take the senators, their income is shrouded in mystery. But we are being told that they receive almost 30 million a month. Newspaper allowance, dressing, wardrobe, overtime, touring, weekend, all these allowances. So that is why it has become clear that the lawmakers, they are part of the leadership, the three aspects of government, to modesty, legislative, executive, judiciary. So they cannot come to equity with soiled hands. So that is why their pay ought to be made public for us to know. But we are now known subterraneously that they too have vanished. Not to talk of those in the executive. Security vote is unknown. Even if it is known, it's not accounted for. Not to talk of ministers, advisors, etc. So until we see that we can monitor what's supposed to come to you officially and openly, the Chinese model here is known. So we have made governance so lucrative. That is why people will borrow money to campaign and contest election. And by the time they are elected, their first job now will be to face all those debts, clear them up, and there's nothing you can do before you can be called an honorable. You have to organize the vote for the record. People will not leave their job to go and queue up. You voted for somebody, now they say it's corrupt, they want to remove it, come out and vote until they get certain number of voters who voted for him. People will not bother, not to talk of the legislature or even the president who is going to take to take the House of Assembly of every state to remove them. So the problem is conversion. This is unfortunate, but the Singaporean experience is noticeable because when that fellow knew that if the Prime Minister was aware, he will not be free, he decided to go the other way and commit suicide. There are many people who are living liberal instead of taking the risk to withstand the trial and say that they could be all right. But if they are hanged, if your mind is clean, therefore you shouldn't fear any accusation. If you have been accused of corruption, wait for the trial. I know of the minister who is outside now. Houses, properties are being seized, and the minister is optimistic that one day he or she will be victorious. So the Singaporean experience has put fear in anti-corruption measures, although it is not the best for one to take his own life. But if you are accused, face the trial. Machinery is there in government to monitor resources. If you are living above your income, especially when the petition, if you are nowadays EFCC acts on petition, to petition somebody with evidence, they start to prove. They call it minimally tried to recover ill-gotten goods. We should put more effort to sanitize the situation. Leave the lower workers who take 5 naira, 10 naira. Let's take it to the higher level.
Okay, sounds like the fight against corruption should be elitist in nature. But even though I know that's not really the context, I'd like to ask you just one question before we're done. The issue of corruption vis-a-vis variables like transparency and accountability, for example. I mean, you come with robust experience in journalism under your belt, right? The Freedom of Information Act, how effective or otherwise has it been?
Freedom of Information Act is that government or institutions should leave information freely. And by journalist code of conduct and ethics, you are not supposed to give out your source of information.
Right.
That is why we put a physiology. Reliable and authoritative sources say that such and such a person has such and such houses. Unconfirmed reports say that. There was a journalist today, Thompson, the Daily Times, went to Guardian, to look at about the Queen of Apple. They were being pushed to disclose how they got ministerial posting. Ministers were to be, ambassadors were to be posted outside. They got it, came out exclusive story. They refused to disclose. Journalists today, Thompson, look at about. They went to prison. Look at about became finally press secretary to ICPC. Today, Thompson remains. So that's it. The Freedom of Information Act is binding government to give out information, don't hoard information. When you hoard it, it will lead journalists to speculation. They will say reliable, but on official sources say they be public holiday. Why should it be reliable? If it's to be reliable, then it should be official. So journalists find way out. They say a person who wanted to plead anonymity disclose, but that the facts are there. So let the government be an open government, don't hide anything. The Freedom of Information Bill 2011, which has become, or to give out information, nothing should be secret, because no matter how you hide it, the fact will leak. And journalists, in order to put their source under safety, they will say reliable, but on official sources have it that this was the cause. On confirmed and on official sources say they were at that, because if they disclose, they put their source in jeopardy. So Freedom of Information Bill is that every information should flow. People can suggest to government can implement, and the government is that the job for the information minister more. We had journalists that have always done well as information minister. When Tony Momo was minister of information, he was writing letters to countrymen every now and then. Although in most cases now, information ministers have to engage in propaganda. I mean, they have to water their bread and they beat the government. I don't want to mention presidents' names, but it ought not to be. Nothing should be hidden. The Freedom of Information is to enhance it, because journalists have the third eye. They want to tell the public what is hidden. That is how their papers will sell. That is how their TV stations will get viewers.
Now that information ministers are panel-beating government, it will appear government is always involved in accidents.
Yes, that's
okay, let's hope they have a smooth ride every other time. But as we end this discussion now, Felix, the insinuation that anti-corruption fight is selective in Nigeria has not helped our cause in any way too. How do we move past that point?
I did say just now that justice must not just be done, it must be seen to have been done. There's no transparency. You see, transparency is what leads to accountability.
Right.
Once something is seen openly, well, interestingly, even though we have the Official Secrets Act, there's something really secret in government. The only thing that is a secret is what only you know. And there's nothing that only one person knows. So long as there's an act,
once you have told somebody,
yes, it has involved more than one person.
Don't tell people.
It's no longer a secret.
Told one person.
So it's no longer a secret. So anything government is doing, anything that is being done in government, it is being carried out by people. So people will always know. Whether you want to cover it up, want to use legislation, it will not solve the problem. What we really deserve as a country, and what we know is going to help us, is that those who are at the end of affairs should be above board. You see, unfortunately, it will sound as if one is trying to be too religious, but it is not religion to say, I'm not going to use the word vanity upon vanity, all is vanity. No, it is just true that you have only one life to live. You have a position. The first obligation you have is to render service to the community. I usually say this in discussions in class. I tell my students and I tell my friends that when you're in the position of public trust, everything is already good for you. So it is not your money you are going to spend. It is public fund. What is wrong is saying, this road is bad, we'll fix it. This quarter needs security, we'll provide it. It is not your money. The money is already there. It is the ability to manage it. Our problem is that we have leadership system that is bereft of constructive and progressive ideas. That is why we are backward. We are not naturally backward. Leave the average Nigerian to explore opportunity. They will do very well. Why do Nigerians excel when they are outside the country? Because they are in a system, in an operational environment where things work. Yesterday evening, one man was telling me that in this life, nobody is sure of his weight. I said, no, people can be sure of their weight when you're outside Nigeria. Don't reduce to religion. You are trying to always say, you don't know tomorrow. Do you know my own tomorrow? Nobody knows it tomorrow. We agree. But let us put things in proper perspective. If you get a job, you are qualified for the job and you do the job well, what will happen? You will always progress. Right. But when you are not qualified, you get the job, you will not progress. You will not be involved in shortcuts, corners, cutting corners, and looking for godfathers. That is why we are not progressing. If the government wants the country to progress, it is possible. But the unfortunate is that those in government don't even know what they are doing. They are looking at what they can take. Let us assume they are successful in accumulating so much wealth. What good has it done? They become islands of wealth in the ocean of poverty. So they also become targets. That is why transparency is the solution. If you are paid your income, as I mentioned also just now, that those in government, they borrow this old Greek ideology that if you are at the philosopher king level, you are not supposed to be inundated with basic encumbrances. That is why things are provided for them in government. You have a driver, you have a steward, you have the gate man, you have the security detail, you have everything provided for you. The people in government don't do anything. They are supposed to sit down and reflect. That's the higher calling. But you need to have a clear mind to be able to sit down and construct ideas that can move the country forward. That's not what we're having. We have a group of rapacious leaders whose own objective is to think of how much they can move into their private account, how much they can move outside the country. Do you see leaders from other countries coming to Nigeria for holiday? But our leaders are always going outside for holiday. Do you see other countrymen coming for treatment in Nigeria? No. We are the ones always doing so, and we celebrate it. The fact that Nigeria is a country that is under hostage of the leadership. The leadership is holding the country hostage. If the country's leadership knows what it is to do, and they are doing it, we won't have all these problems. We agree that in 2021, there are greater challenges. We are talking of the Omicron variant of COVID-19 now. Those are the things that are challenging leadership. How do we ensure that the greater number of people leave poverty? How do we ensure that the middle class is sustainable? In Nigeria today, you're either rich or you are poor.
Two extremes.
Extremes. And extremes don't ever reconcile. In Marxist argument, teleology, it is that this is antithetical to progress. So the seed of capitalism will sow the discord that will destroy capitalism. That's where Nigeria is. That's why we are tottering on the brink with so much insecurity, so much uncertainty. We now have a growing number of youth who are disillusioned, who have no role models to look up to. They will tell you who has education helped. They will even openly tell you, what have you done with what you know? Did you get a good job? Even if you got a job, were you well paid? So you begin to question your existence. Existential issues are the ones we are always talking about in Nigeria today. Unfortunately, that is the way our leadership has driven us into. And people are no longer looking at how to change. People are now waiting, as we said openly, and even in normal discourse now, that those waiting to be corrupt are more than those who are already in corruption. And that means there will be no hope. But we can solve this problem. Yeah. Let there be transparency. Let there be accountability. Let it be known that if you take, you will be punished. But if you put in more, you will get more. Once it is clear the reward system is efficient, crime is punished appropriately. There are no godfathers covering up. The anti-corruption agencies are not doing selective tracing and punishment. It is not when election is coming, you say, okay, this person is likely going to be a very strong rival. Let us investigate him. Let us now check. No, it is not that man that is your problem. It is the fact that the system has allowed things to go wrong. That's the problem. Put the system in order. So once the anti-corruption process in Nigeria is clean, is able to cleanse itself, as it even happened to Magu recently, who was the head of ESC, who was now being investigated. I mean, it becomes unfortunate. So once there's no transparency, the person that you have given meat to keep is now the one that stole the meat. What do you now do? That means there is no hope. But we can't just give up. Hope is what sustains society. If a society without hope is a society that is in anomie. Once we put in place structures and we agree that these structures are there, which we have, EFCC, ICPC, the police system, for the intelligence unit in the banks, they are all there. BVN is there. That is already established. Let us manage them in a transparent manner. The transparency and the sustainability is what will make the process accountable. And once it's accountable, the checking system will not be able to balance itself out. Therefore, we will not have an organized and functional society. Else, everything will be dysfunctional.
Felix Osareme, lecturer, Department of International Studies and Diplomacy. Thank you for the insights.
Thank you very much.
That you shared on the program. I also want to say thank you to Barrister Adams Aliyu, Notary Public Constitutional Lawyer. We are grateful for the time you spent with us on the program. This is where we're leaving it with this discussion. Everyone, we're back shortly. Stay with me.